107 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
Upon that proposition, this great land of liberty was founded. And to this day, the persecuted, the oppressed, the weary look upon our shores with eyes of hope. Let us tell, then, the story of America. In the beginning, when the freedom of man was a vision in the hearts of a few, the pilgrims came to our shores, that they might find a land where God could be worshipped according to a man's own conscience, where man might govern himself and live in peace and understanding with his fellow men. After they had prayed, they rolled up their sleeves and went to work. The building of America had begun. By 1630, nearly 1,000 immigrants had followed the path of freedom to land at Boston Harbor in Massachusetts Bay. Yes, the colonies were growing. The Indians looked on with distrust and alarm as they watched the white man inhabit their hunting grounds. Indians on the warpath. But all this was part of a job that had to be done in this land that had to be settled, so a nation could be born. And after a while, the Indians knew the white man would always be here. So they made peace, or moved further west. It seemed a fitting and proper time to give thanks to Almighty God. The colonists raised their voices in jubilation. Well, the new settlements prospered. It looked like everything was going to be all right, until their hard-won personal rights were pierced with a proclamation. Taxes, taxes without representation, a hated tyranny of the old world reaching out to the new. Protest, protest! The answer came swiftly. Soldiers of the king thundered through the streets in the night, seeking out those listed as enemies of the crown. But in a meeting at St. John's Church,
give me liberty or give me death!
Patrick Henry's speech lighted the torch of liberty. Soon the angry colonists were burning the very goods on which the unjust taxes were levied. Dressed as Indians, they threw bales of tea into Boston Harbor. The die had been cast. The Continental Congress met in grave session.
That these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states.
And a great human document was forged in the fire of patriotic fervor. It proclaimed these truths as self-evident.
That all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And in the ringing notes of liberty, a new flag was born, when Betsy Ross made a banner of red, white, and blue with 13 stars, each star a state. And the great battles began. Under John Paul Jones, the American Navy fought on. At Valley Forge, the great strength of Washington held the army together. The years of the war were long, dark days in the history of our country. But Washington joined Lafayette at Yorktown. The decisive battle was fought. With sudden finality, the war was over. The Liberty Bell rang out the news. We had won. We were a nation. It was decided that this new nation should have laws by which to govern itself. The Constitution of the United States was written. The states agreed. And to certify that these new laws would work for the people, there was added the Bill of Rights, freedom of worship, freedom of speech, of the press, the right of assembly. James Madison put it this way.
In approving this Bill of Rights, we have executed the will of the people.
A mighty lot had been accomplished up to now. We had our freedom, our nation, and our first president, George Washington. In the years that followed, the great era of exploration began. This was our nation in the early 1800s. But Thomas Jefferson was president then, and he looked at the map, seeing the vast territory of Louisiana. And he had an idea about all that land.
I come before you to ask for an appropriation for the purchase from the French of the province of Louisiana.
The Louisiana Territory was purchased for about 4 cents an acre. And with fitting and proper ceremony, the stars and stripes were raised over the vast and fertile land. The War of 1812 burst upon our shores with sudden fury, a test by fire for so young a nation. But Andrew Jackson was there with his homespun men of the backwoods. In the harbor at Baltimore, the guns of Fort McHenry blazed defiantly. And here, Francis Scott Key, watching the battle through the night, wrote a song, which he called the Star-Spangled Banner. In 2 years, the war came to an end, and Francis Scott Key was a good prophet. Our flag was still there. We still had our nation, and we had a song for the people to sing. It then seemed expedient to consider all those peoples who lived with us as good neighbors in this hemisphere, and to give warning to foreign powers, to foreign aggressors, for that time and ever after. James Monroe read the text to John Quincy Adams.
We owe it, therefore, to candor and to the amicable relations existing between the United States and those powers to declare that we should consider any attempt on their part to extend their system to any portion of this hemisphere as dangerous to our peace and safety.
This doctrine was a bulwark to further protect the principles on which this country was founded. Now began the great era of expansion. In the Mexican campaign, Texas was won. And then we acquired the vast territories of California and Oregon. From California, the cry of gold was heard round the world. And from every way the wind blows, adventurers race to this fabulous land of the rich bonanza. But again, storm clouds were gathering over our republic as the northern and southern states of our union took issue.
Secession, gentlemen! The people of my state are in favor of it.
The truth was self-evident. The United States of America were no longer united. Fort Sumter was fired upon, and the sad news came to a great good man. This was no war of foreign aggression. Both the North and the South believed their cause to be just. The final victory fell to the North, but the people at home had little heart for jubilation. They were only thankful that the weary struggle was at an end. On the hallowed ground at Gettysburg, Abraham Lincoln spoke simply his immortal words.
That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Mr. Lincoln, rail splitter, lawyer, president, had finished his work. Now began the great era of reconstruction and development. Lumbering prairie schooners rolled over the plains. Lusty, bustling western towns sprang up in 100 places. And a huffing, puffing herald of progress marked a new trail with cinders and black smoke. Long, spike-studded rails had spanned a continent. The iron horse had joined the east and the west. The conquest of the prairies and the mountains and the deserts was ended. But the aged hatreds of the old world were again reaching out to embroil us in conflict.
The battleship Maine has been sunk in Havana Harbor with great loss of life.
Colonel Theodore Roosevelt, at the head of his own Rough Riders, led the charge at San Juan Hill. After one of the shortest wars in our history, Teddy said goodbye to his regiment and, fulfilling his destiny, became President of the United States. But he never ceased fighting for what he believed to be right.
Because only that nation is prepared for peace that knows how to fight. Speak softly, but carry a big stick.
The 20th century was growing up when Woodrow Wilson became president, but his years in office were overshadowed by the great human sacrifice that was World War #1. Soon after the beginning of his second term as president, the policy of hands-off could no longer be tolerated. The war message was read in Congress on April 2nd, 1917. 2 million men crossed the ocean to invade the invader. Chateau Thierry and Belleau Wood knew their courage. Then came Saint-Mihiel and the Meuse-Argonne. And finally, when the strange hush of peace fell upon them, they went home. Or slept forever in Flanders fields.